people are coming in. So Christian, what were you talking about? The Great Resignation? It sounds like very monumental.
Yeah, I think that's like the timing of this is awesome, because there was just this article about the Great Resignation. Like typically 20% of people change every year, and this year I think the number is up to 40%. And I think we see this everywhere with people like changing their job left and right.
Yeah, but it's not even like changing to new companies, right? Like people just 40%. Yeah. And like some people, it's like, oh, after the COVID thing, reevaluate my life, and I want to start a farm somewhere else. Yeah, 40% of people.
40% of people are changing their job this year.
Yeah, I feel like this summer, I think is specifically the message. We've seen it as well. Like there's a clear increase in the job changes that we've seen.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And I think the interesting thing is really that some people don't even, they don't have their next job yet. It's more like, it's mostly about the Great Resignation, right? It's not about the great finding a new job, but it's like, okay, I need a break here.
Well, it's like, okay, it's very like Red Rover and Trinity on over, like, meaning they're swapping to the same companies, you know, so they're looking for something, and then they're swapping to like the same opportunity. But 40%, that's high. That's almost half of people are going to change their job.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, even like on the flip end, right, from the companies, like so many hiring. Like you on LinkedIn, you just keep seeing job postings left and right.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So my favorite thing about the job, and people probably who are on the line, anyone who's on the line, jump into the chat and say hi and say your name, name and role, and why you encouraged us with your presence. But my favorite thing is when people go to LinkedIn after they've changed jobs, and they give this like Grammy award winning speech. They're like, I want to thank my mom, you know, and I want to thank this person that I worked with at Turn. It's just like on and on and on. And it's like, oh my gosh. Like, it's kind of like the Close One channel when someone wins a deal and they're like, I want to thank the PR and the solutions engineer and the guy made by McMuffins. And like, they're just going ham on these LinkedIn posts. And it's like, okay, TLDR, you're changing jobs because, and I get the story of like, oh, I just couldn't turn this down. But I'm like, it's very rarely that, in my opinion, of like, I just could not turn this role down. It's more of like, I wasn't happy here. I wanted to move on. I don't know. I was kind of thinking of like, it's just a little much.
Yeah, and Aaron just wrote that he's seeing exactly that all his ICPs have switched companies. Yeah,
totally. And it's just, well, it's brutal. It's changing the sales game into, you truly have to be just really multi-threaded. Like you have to assume a churn at this point. Assume a churn as someone, champion, influencer, decision maker, someone in the middle of the sales cycle. You know, you have to assume. Go ahead.
And the importance of the like the faster the sales cycle, the better. Like there's really, you want to be as quick as possible so that this person doesn't leave before this is done. Right.
Well, cool. So we're a couple minutes in. So why don't we jump in here? Christian, do you want to lead, and I'll go ahead and share my deck in the meantime.
Yes, if you could share this. So hey everyone, we're really happy to have you here. This is the second part of our series. We have once again the superstar back with us. She's going to introduce herself in a second. So we also have, from the user term side, we have Trinity, who leads marketing and is responsible for putting this all together. And then I'm the CEO and co-founder of User Gems, and I'm going to share a little bit at the back in the end of the meeting how we think about automation for all of these plays. But the main purpose is to let Becc share her wisdom.
No, so I certainly want to make this a we thing as much as possible. So anyone who's in this room, I'm not going to make it easy on you. If you would ask questions, make this fun. Don't leave us up here on the line to where we're just, as much as I love talking at people in a monologue for 45 minutes, like you could help me save me from myself for the next session. But if you have any questions, if you have any stories of, people who are just swapping either mid-cycle, but we're going to be doubling down today. So like Christian mentioned, we had 3 playbooks on the front end for the first webinar, where we're talking mostly about how do you generate pipeline. This is more going to be for when you are in the sales cycle, and what's the impact there of people changing in and out. Anyone who's been in sales, for any period of time has likely seen this, especially if, like Christian mentioned, you're a non-transactional sale and you're a longer tail sale of 30 days, anywhere up to a year and a half, heaven forbid, the amount of changes that will happen in that period of time. So we're going to cover 3 playbooks from soup to nuts, and then Christian's going to finish off with how do you automate everything. But Trinity's going to be scouring the chat for any questions. And if you don't ask questions, she's going to figure out who you are and tag you on LinkedIn and make it public that you are asking.
Yes, absolutely. Like I need to highlight, I've seen it last time, just how insightful Becc is, like on the spot, non-prepared question where it's like, I'm so glad Becc is answering this and not me. But yeah, please ask the question. You can also just text to me or Trinity, and we'll get it in front of Becc.
Yeah, so let's jump in here. This is going to be more account executive focused on what do I do when this happens in the middle of the process. But we're going to cover 3 playbooks. The first one is going to be when you're selling to an account and basically a customer changes jobs into, for simplicity's sake, let's say I'm selling into Twilio, and I formerly worked with PagerDuty, with the team over at PagerDuty. Like, they bought my product, they bought my service, just for clarity's sake. And my decision maker, champion, influencer, someone who really, enjoyed the value that we drove at PagerDuty, changes roles into Twilio. So what do I do then? How do I leverage that? And so this can really add gas to the fire. But the first 2 playbooks, the first one is I'm selling into Twilio. My decision maker, champion, influencer changed jobs from PagerDuty into Twilio, and they do hit my ideal customer title. Meaning, let's say that I sell into a VP of sales, and they changed roles into Twilio, and they are VP of sales. Like, they're my decision maker moving forward. So they're my heavy hitter. The second playbook we're going to go into is, if they change from PagerDuty to Twilio and they don't hit ICT, meaning I sell into a VP of sales and they are sales enablement. They just switched in their sales enablement. So they're not my core decision maker. They're not the person that's going to be signing on the dotted line, but they're still internal at the org, and they still use my tool. They still use Flip the Script in the past. And so, how do I leverage that experience in the sales cycle when they're not the decision maker at my account? And then the third one, we're going to go into a playbook of things you can be watching out for when, let's say I'm selling into Twilio and the person that I was working with, my champion, leaves mid opportunity. So this is someone, that I had obviously built quite a bit of rapport with, and things have been going super well. And then all of a sudden, they switch out. And so what do I do? What can I do proactively and retroactively, to make sure that the sales still happen? So I'm probably most excited about that playbook, but all 3 are going to be very important. They happen all the time. I cannot name especially the enterprise deals I've been working, I cannot name a time where one of these didn't happen.
Absolutely.
Partly for me. Go ahead.
And I think that the third one is just so heartbreaking. Like you're so close, and you think you bring it to the finish line, and then this person changes their job. So
totally.
the earlier you know this, the better. Like you don't want to risk anything.
Totally. And again, 40% of people are going to change jobs.
Especially this year, yeah. Like if you've seen it in the past, you're gonna see twice as often this year.
And I remember anecdotally, whenever I was first as a SDR, like I took a step back from being an account executive, and I was first at an org, and I remember I spent painstaking amount of time to build, and this is just an internal story, build rapport with my CRO. of like, I'm like, I want to be valuable to him, you know, so I did everything I had to do from a numbers perspective, from a, you know, getting in front of him perspective, with the right things, getting his buy-in, getting his opinion, you know, really delivering value for him. And then he churned, and then I got another CRO, and I'm like, and here we go again. So I started over with the second CRO, and like, I was right there to the finish line if I was going to get a promotion. And then he churned, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm like, how many CROs do I have to build rapport with? So point being, you should plan for this to happen. And what do we do? So this is a way to be, this is just one case of how to be very intentional. So full disclosure, this is going to be my perspective on how you do it. User Gems is just the engine of how to fuel these people into sequences and playbooks that you make sure. Most people, in my experience, they want to do plays like this, but it's very hard because people are changing roles all the time. So the amount of bandwidth you'd have to see all of that is you know, beyond the normal 9 to 5, certainly. So Playbook 1, this is, again, you worked with PagerDuty. They had a great experience with you. You know, a chief of which was Trinity. You know, Trinity had a great experience with you. I'm selling into Twilio currently, and Trinity just changed roles, lucky me, from PagerDuty into Twilio, and she's now the VP of sales, which is who I sell into. So it's my decision maker as someone that I've already sold into the past. So what's the playbook there? So there's going to be 13 steps for this playbook, and it's going to be over 30 days essentially. And the first step that I would start out with is I would view this from the perspective of the person of Trinity, essentially. Like, when I come in the door, I want to make decisions quickly, and I want to see what opportunities there are. But I don't want to feel like you just show up whenever you need something and just show up whenever you're asking for something. And I also have a lot of things that are going on. So how do we balance those two realities? You know, Trinity, sorry for the siren in the background, but Trinity signs on to this new role, and she's looking to make an impact very quickly, you know, but also how do we make sure that we don't come in too hot and heavy, you know, in the first week whenever she's just learning where the bathroom is and what the ICPs are. So on the first day, whenever they flex into this sequence, I would essentially just send a package, you know, a direct mail package to Trinity and congratulate her. Of like, her reality is she just started, and again, she wants to feel like you're on her side regardless. Like, she did you a favor of buying you at PagerDuty. So, you know, you first want to lead with, instead of, and this is kind of counter selling, what I call is counter selling or anti selling, of how you're selling is by focusing on adding value. So the goal is still to sell, but how you do it is by taking care of people and by viewing their perspective and helping them in the current moment. So it's exciting for her that she just started there. So I would send her a direct mail package and just say, you know, welcome to the role. I saw that you just made this change, and excited to see what you do there. And they are expecting you as a salesperson to essentially sell. Like that is what they are expecting you to do. So I would counteract that with proving to them from a character perspective that you are not the typical sales rep that only does stuff that's in it for them. So I'd send them a direct mail package, and then I would do a little bit of like any kind of LinkedIn research on you know, the company, her new role, what her current team is, and what her new reality is, so we can make sure that we have a little bit of that background. I say this very lightly, but doing research beforehand, I do this before every single call, and I'll mention a couple of details about them, and watching their face, I can tell you that it's just a really positive experience. And I'm like, I saw that you're based in, you know, Florida, you know, or that you just moved there. Like, why'd you make the move? And having those level of questions that proves to them that like you're focused on them can really just qualitatively change the call. So I would do a little bit of LinkedIn research, try to get in her head and see what world she's walking into. So the step number 2 is I would send her a congratulations email. So I'd send her, you know, the package with the email. And I think something worth noting is when you send someone a package, it doesn't mean they owe you anything. So I see reps, you know, they'll send a package and they'll be like, so do you want to jump on the call? Because I sent you those cups. It's like, I don't care. Like the cups weren't that great. They're good, but they weren't that great. So I would make sure within your congrats email, and we're going to go into the text of these in a minute. But step number 2 is I would send them a congratulations email. And then you'll notice there's a healthy delta here of 14 business days. So send over the package to kind of turn on the water, so to speak, or turn on the oven, you know, communicating to them that you're there before you ask for something. So I view people a lot of times as a bank account of like, if I don't make enough deposits, then I cannot ask for a withdrawal. So if and I'll give you an example, this is probably a bad example, but I do some stuff that I need to make up for sometimes. And a recent example is I realized that I needed to invoice someone, and I realized that I hadn't checked in on them in a while. So I'm like, I need to start there before I even ask them about this invoice. So I'm like, okay, I put in my doc of like, okay, you need to invoice them in a, you know, whatever, 60 days, 45 days. But right now you need to ask them, how's it going? Are things working? How's the team? Yada, yada, you know, and being very intentional. I wouldn't see this as being sleazy. I would see this as being intentional about reminding yourself to buy flowers for your partner because your partner likes flowers and that makes them happy, and you forgot about that. And so you're on the back foot. So I would send this congrats email, and then I would wait, you know, a couple of weeks, and you can delta this based on your liking. But step 3 on day 15, I would send them a prospecting email where essentially the goal of this email, and we're going to get into the text again, we're going to go for a meeting where you run some level of discovery on them. So just because they bought at PagerDuty, that means, you know, it was a good use of Trinity's time, money and budget and problems that she had to solve at PagerDuty to do so. That does not mean that it is the same at Twilio. I would say 100% of the time, it's at best case scenario, different reasons of why she would buy you, but it's not in the box. You know, so I would go for in the meeting, what you're after is to get a meeting with Trinity again, to kind of do some discovery of what she's thinking about rolling out, why she's thinking about rolling that out, you know, what are the problems that she's seeing with the team, and how can you inherently solve for some of those. But I would do her the respect of running kind of a different sales cycle, like doing discovery from the bottom up, and not just relying on like, hey, Trinity, we're cool, you know, we're friends, you like us, you want to buy again. So that's the inherent goal of the meeting, but we'll go into that. But the first email that I would send over is day 15. Day 15, I would make a cold call, and I would make one that the next day on day 16 and leave a voicemail and say, hey, you know, hope everything is going well. You know, and basically go for the CTA. And again, we'll get into text in a minute, but I would do cold call with voicemail on the 15th and 16th. Then I would respond on day 22 with a reply to my first prospecting email, you know, just asking any thoughts and adding some content, and we'll get into the text, but adding a cold call there on day 27. And you'll notice this is a very light, soft push with Trinity. Trinity already knows you. So like hypothetically, your work is already done, meaning, so to speak. She already knows what the pony is that she paid the ticket for at PagerDuty. So she knows what the pony is at Twilio too, what she's getting with you. And hopefully that's a win for you. Like, you took care of her, you know, she really saw the value. So you want to be very light in your playbook here. But day 27, we're going to send a value email. And what I mean by value email is you're sending value only and not asking for anything. Couple of cold calls. And again, I know the cold calls seem relatively aggressive in here, but you have to keep in mind, you know, you're only leaving one voicemail. I would say ideal case scenario, you have the direct dial of Trinity because you and Trinity are friends, because she did you the respect of buying you and you took care of her. Like there's some level of inherent, you know, friendship because you took care of her so well. So number of different cold calls, but I would only leave 2 voicemails on day 30. And then day 16, and then the last email we'll get into is going to be, you're going to break up with Trinity. So sounds
quick question, Becc. There's a question from Chris. What are you saying when you leave a voicemail?
That's a great question. So we're going to get into the text. That's a leading question. You know that. But that's a great question. So we'll get into the text in just a second for voicemail. Not to blow you off, but we'll get there in a couple slides. That's a great question. So were there any more questions before I move on to this slide, Trinity?
Move on. Yeah, you can move on.
Okay, so the meeting again, and I want it, the difference between these playbooks 1 and 2 is going to be what you're going to do on the back end once you get the meeting. You know, so that's the majority of the difference is what you're asking for in your first email, you know, the CTA of the meeting and the goal of the meeting and the agenda of the meeting is going to delta based on, is this someone who hits ICT, or is this the person that we want to sell into that's going to be the decision maker, or is Trinity in a adjacent role? But this first case scenario, they are the decision maker. So this is where I would do some level of, when you get that meeting with Trinity, I wouldn't just focus in on, you know, hey, you bought us in the past, you want to buy us now.
Yeah.
I would say, you know, and you can get away with, this sounds bad, but you can get away with anything with a good pattern, self-aware pattern interrupt. And I do these all the time within my discovery call. So most of my prospects actually, if they're tuning into content, they note about it. They're like, oh, so that's what that sounds like. I'm like, yeah. Like it is, but I usually say something like, not to discover you here, and I don't mean to discover you to death. And if you can stomach it, I'll do, you know, two last questions, and then we can get into the meat of what we do. But in that meeting with Trinity, you know, once she says like, yeah, okay, we can jump on the phone, I would do some level of discovery, not on her in the past or her in general, but essentially what she's seeing at Twilio, what her priorities are, and why her priorities are there. Like, what's the low-hanging fruit that when she comes in as a leader, the first thing leaders do is they say, well, I'm going to assess. They do like a 90-day plan. I'm going to assess for the first 30. I'm going to craft a plan for the second 30. And then the last 30, I'm going to execute that plan. You know, so she's right now at this point, you know, you wrapped up this meeting at day 15, right? So she's in her first couple of weeks. She's in the first 30 days. So I would do discovery, you know, with her in terms of what she's seeing at Twilio, what are the low hanging fruit that she's like, oh, these are some big problems I got to solve. You know, these are some less aggressive problems. So you can get an appetite of how immediate, you know, is the need for her to solve a problem, you know, that you solve for. So just because someone solved a problem with you in the past, it A, doesn't mean that they have that problem with the current org, and B, it doesn't mean necessarily that it's top priority. Prioritization comes down to how aggressive is the issue, you know, how often is it happening, what's the impact of that issue, how close is that issue to my reality, meaning I get hired or fired because of it. So she might be prioritizing of like, hey, this is important, but it's 5th on my list because top 3 are, I got to get pipeline going. You know, we have no KPI system for our AEs, you know, et cetera. So I would go for some level of light discovery on what she's seeing in her first couple of weeks there, so that you can, and I would be as most open-handed that you can be with the conversation. I'll tell you why, and we can get into some tactical. Understand the answer of like what's going on in their org, not what's going on in their org so I'm increasing the level of problems so I can sell them, but what's truly going on in their org. And the more questions that you can ask in that latter bucket, the better, because they can feel it. They can feel you trying to sell, you know, and I have to remind myself of this over and over on sales calls. So point being, when you have this discovery meeting with Trinity, I would try to be as open-ended as I can of like just caring about her and getting to know her world, and letting go of the you know, trying to push her to a certain angle, that when your sales ears perk up, when you hear someone say something that you're like, oh, awesome, because we solve for that, the more that happens in your sales calls, the more that you know that you are selling and the more that you know that your buyer is going to feel it. So objections from a base level is someone throwing an object in the way of you because you're trying to sell them and they're trying to stop you, right? So that meeting, you want to be as you know, helpful to her as you can, understand her reality and what she's going through, But the goal of the meeting is, if all of this lines up and truly, you know, the problem that you solve for is somewhere near her top 3 priority list, like if it's not, if it's priority number 5, even if you try to get it, she's not going to do it. So you might as well, you know, plan for that, of like understand how top of mind that is for her. So, but the CTA of that meeting is, I would aim to set up a meeting with her and the team after the discovery, so that you do some of that discovery in front of that team and you make her a part of the process. So this is a pain in the butt, I get it. But every single time someone is added to your sales cycle, if you are not doing discovery and understanding what they care about and including them in the conversation as a part of the sales cycle, like you're just tacking up and up the likelihood that if your buyer does manage to buy, which you're going to decrease conversion, but if they do manage to buy, they bought in spite of you, not because of you. You know, so every time someone walks in that room, I'd be like, okay, Trinity is now at the org. So that's great for me that we did well with her, but I need to understand what she's after and how can I, you know, solve for it. And then I need the goal of this meeting to be that I include Trinity with the team. And this can be a team building exercise of like, now Trinity is a part of the team and she's evaluating me, but she's already used me. So it's a win. So the CTA of that meeting is to schedule a call with her team members. And again, I think there's no more attractive behavior than doing discovery in front of her as if you're not friends. You know, of like, I want to understand you guys as a team. How does this impact, how does Trinity's job change impact this team and what you're after now that she's a part of the role? So I need to keep moving because I'm behind on time already. But this meeting with the other players, I would do active discovery in front of them, you know, so that they know that you're not just nepotistic-ing it, you know, that they know that you're not, that Trinity isn't an advocate of you just because you bought from her or she bought from you in the past and you're friends, but that there's an active use case and you need to figure out what that use case is. So selling based on someone liking you, I made a post yesterday, but selling someone based on someone liking you, even if they do manage to buy, there is a huge, you know, a buyer's remorse on the back end, because they shouldn't be buying because they like you. They should, even if they do, they shouldn't be buying because they like you. They should be buying because there is an inherent business case. So I'd be after finding, you know, what that business case is for Trinity. So here's a couple of steps, and I don't think I have too much time to go into them, but I would, once you get the meeting, you know, I'd go for the first meeting with the champion, have a meeting with all the teammates. And then when the other teammates are involved, make it a group decision. So they feel like as a group, you're not just going to Trinity and getting the purchase done, but you're involving them in it. So these are the 5 elements that I think are important, you know, during that process. Number 1, you catch the prospect up to speed. You catch Trinity up to speed on everything that's happened so far to date within the sales cycle. Number 2, that you do discovery on her in specific. Number 3, that you do discovery in front of the rest of the team, so you don't think that it's just you and Trinity are homies and that's the reason why she's buying. Number 4, that you value these other team members. So you need to, and I can't stress this enough, I'm just going to double down over and over and over, whether it's an intern, whether it's sales enablement, whether it's a VP of sales, whether it's SDRs, whether it's CFO, you meet someone at that org, you do discovery, you add value, and you treat them with respect, because you are always multi-threading, whether you like it or not. You're always communicating who you are to these buyers. So if you leave someone out of a conversation, you're slapping them in the face, and then you just turn down someone who could have been an influencer, could have been a champion, but now isn't because of your behavior. And I'm saying this to myself, this is the painful way to sell, but you either put your time investment and work in the front end in making everyone happy and truly finding out what matters to them and solving for that and making everything an inclusive nature, or you do it on the back end when you send 18,000 follow-up emails. And the former, so you're going to do your work either way, and the former is going to increase the likelihood that you actually can close the deal. So I would say value all of the team members in the cycle. Don't lose sight of what's important to them. Always be inclusive of that. and make the purchasing process a group decision within those meetings. So Trinity, do we have a question? I think something dinged up in the chat.
Yeah, there was the one about the voicemail. I don't think we touched on that one yet.
Yeah,
maybe it's later.
No, we did touch on.
Not on the voicemail. Like what would you say in the voicemail? So I think there are two scenarios, and I'm just elaborating more and adding my own thoughts into Chris' question. Is like, if in this case, like the person, you already know them because you sold to them directly in the past,
yes.
Or it wasn't you, it was someone else in your team. So they are customers of your company, but you don't have that personal relationship. So what would you say in this voicemail?
Yeah, so we'll get into, I'm going to go into the emails in just a minute. But essentially TLDR, well, actually, why don't I just skip through to those, because the emails, usually my voicemails, and you'll notice this a lot in my, quote unquote methodology, is I'm sending high quality emails and then I'm calling them and then I leave a voicemail that's pattern interruptive, that basically says the reason for your call, and it refers them, it says no need to respond. But if you check your email with the email title blank, and we can, if you like what you see, we can pick it up from there. So usually my voicemails, the goal of a voicemail is, from my perspective, this is going to sound insane, is not to get a call back. The goal of a voicemail is to get them moving in the direction you want them to move. So I've seen a lot of reps say like, oh, well, I get a lot of callbacks. And I'm like, well, you left a message that said, this is Becc, call me back. They're scared that someone's in the hospital. So they called you back, but then they found out that no one's in the hospital and you're a sales rep. So now they don't want to talk to you. So your inherent goal of getting the prospect moving, from my view, is can only usually be achieved in a voicemail of like, hey, I'm the annoying sales rep in a cold scenario. I'm the annoying sales rep that just keeps hammering you with emails. And the real reason for my outreach is I saw you wrote this article where you're blah, blah. No need to call me back. If you just go to your email and see an email that's titled blank, and if you do find value, then we can pick it up from there. Either way, I hope you're having a great day, is usually how my voicemails are structured. So you take the pressure off of them calling you back. You give them a CTA, that they are still engaging with you, because usually people, I think about it from the buyer perspective. You're never going to call a seller back, like, unless you need them. And so the goal of them, that voicemail, is for them to understand whether they need you, which is all described out in the great email that you sent over. So usually the voicemails are just a proponent to get them to read the email. And what I saw doing that approach is I saw a massive spike in people responding to the emails.
I think it's super smart. Like I heard from organizations like, are you still doing cold calls? And the answer is yes, because it gets me more responses to my emails. So might as well spell it out more clearly in the voicemail.
Right. The pressure of a cold call, you're going to see a lot of no-shows to cold call. Industry standard is almost double, because over an email, if they didn't want to do the thing, they don't feel bad. They just don't respond. A cold call, they might just feel bad, and so they're like, okay, yeah, I'll do that Friday at 9 or whatever. And then they just ghost you. So, inherently cold calls are a part of a strategy, but I would try to take it to more respectful territory, and say like, hey, there's an email in your inbox, be brief, be brilliant, be gone, kind of thing, and defer to that email. So, so the structure of the emails, I'm going to touch this lightly and then get into the case number 2, but the first email, again, is just a congratulatory email. You're going to get the deck afterwards where I go, obviously more deeply into this. I congratulate him on the new job and just say like, I think you're going to do some pretty incredible things with the new team there. And I would add some piece of value. So I always try to add value in every email. By the way, I thought you might like this article on scaling teams effectively in the first 90 days, especially point number 3. Best of luck with everything. And then I would say, I always push pull near the end. Impressed by the jump, excited to watch you kill it. Let me know if I can be of any help along the way. That's it. It's a congratulations email. Don't sell. They know why you're there. Most of the people that buy me, when they see the technique on the back end, they're like, oh, So you followed up with some content. I'm like, right. And they're like, but you really need an update. I'm like, right. And then I say, did you know that? And they're like, yeah. I sent over content, but they knew what I needed. So I would just focus on congratulating them, adding a piece of value, and getting out of the way, so that you're in her mind as someone who sent over a piece of value, but then you kept moving. So email number 2, and this is the prospecting email that would come on day 15. And whenever you're calling, again, when you're leaving the voicemail, and it's back in this grid as to when. So basically, when I'm leaving this voicemail, I'm always referring to the most recent email that I sent them. So in this breakup one, I'm referring to, you can refer to any of these emails, but essentially in these 2 voicemails, I'm always referring to the premise of my last email, and I'm referring them back to the most recent email that I sent them in terms of the voicemail. So the second email, and this is the prospecting email. So you said congratulations, you sent her a package, you sent her an article, on welcome to the team. And the prospecting email that I would send, I would structure like this. I would first personalize. You did a certain amount of research in that first step where you saw what she's doing at Twilio, at her new org. So I'd say, hey, reason for my outreach is I noticed that now at Twilio, you're focused on blank, and I couldn't stop thinking about, and I would refer her back to the previous usage that she used you at PagerDuty. Couldn't stop thinking about all the great results, at least from my perspective, that we saw that we were able to achieve together at PagerDuty. And I would classic role diffusion. And this is a technique that I do quite a bit. But basically, if you just say not to, and then fill in whatever you're about to do, not to be the trainer who goes too long and is too wordy on topics that are going to take too much time and might take us overtime for a webinar, and then you can do whatever you just said. Not to be a typical rep who follows up whenever there's only something in it for me, not to be an annoying sales rep who tries to do a play on words, and then you can do it. So this is going to communicate that you're self-aware. So where I'd use it here is, again, your first line of this email, hi Trinity, reason for my outreach is I noticed that now since you're at Twilio, you've been picking up X, Y, and Z. And I couldn't stop thinking about how, all the great things that we were able to accomplish together while you at your time at PagerDuty. Not to be the typical rep that just comes around whenever they want a second sale, but I thought there were some interesting ways that we could potentially help the team at Twilio to X, Y, and Z. So you want to pattern interrupt always at the beginning of what you're about to do, so that they don't view you as a person who's just trying to push the second sale. The CTA, I would ask for one call with her where you're saying, if you'd give me a shot, if you give me a chance Wednesday at 2 so we could catch up. And I like to hear a little bit more about what you're doing in regards to X, Y, and Z. I promise that I won't try and push another sale on you if you don't think it's a fit. And the last piece here is really important. And this is actually based off of what Trinity and Christian spearheaded here. But I would say full disclosure, this is not, and it depends on the use case. But if you're selling into someone who is not the decision maker, so this is for Playbook 2, which we haven't covered yet, but if they're not the person you're going to move forward with, I would say full disclosure, this is not so you spearhead the process. We've already got a chat going on with blank. I just thought you might be willing to give me your story on what we accomplished over at PagerDuty. If not, no worries. I just thought there's no harm in asking. And then I would push pull near the end. Either way, appreciative of you becoming a customer while you're at PagerDuty. It's great to watch how you've, incorporated some of these techniques over at the team, new team at Twilio, and I hope you're adapting well with the new team. So go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, Trini, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is like middle of the opportunity, right? So when would you start sharing with the new GM what you already discovered with the existing team in the last couple weeks or so?
Yeah. So in that first call, again, this is the playbook of, and I'll take everyone back up to this screen. This is the playbook to get the first call with Trinity. And in that call with Trinity, you want to unpack with her what has happened previously and understand what's going on with her right now, with the goal of getting a call with the group together if she's the decision maker. The difference between that and if she joins, and in Playbook 2, and again, you're going to get this nerdy slide deck afterwards and you can peek through it. The Playbook 2, Trinity joins Twilio and she's not the decision maker. She's at an adjacent role, or maybe she's, a frontline manager. In that case scenario, I would be looking for a disco call where the CTA, the difference is you want to catch her up on what's happened at Twilio so far. You want to do some light discovery on what she's after. And then the CTA, how it's different is you want to set up a meeting with the decision maker, where Trinity would give you give her story of how successful you were at PagerDuty. So she is a decision maker. You want to run discovery and get her in front of the team so you make it a group decision and you make it easy on her to buy. In the latter case scenario where she's not the decision maker now, I would want to go for a meeting, run some light discovery with the goal of getting in front of the decision maker so she gives the narrative, because now you're just leveraging her to sell into a separate decision maker. So that is the goal of this process, is to get her in front of the true decision maker to say like, hey, here's an internal case study of how she used it in the past. So the playbook on the back end for this, it can be used in both cases. So in the case where in this prospecting email, this piece near the end, full disclosure, this is not so you spearhead the process. That is if she's not the decision maker. So you take off some of that weight. But to your question, Trinity, on when would I reach out to that decision maker, I would not reach out to that decision maker. If Trinity joined Twilio and she was not the decision maker, I would not circumvent Trinity and go to the decision maker and be like, go talk to Trinity about the use case. Number one, you don't know what's in that bag. Trinity might not have liked it. She might have said she liked it and didn't. She might have liked it at the beginning and then didn't. She might not think that it's a use case at Twilio. So it might not be a parachute. It might be a knapsack. So it might be a bomb. So I would never go to the decision maker and be like, Trinity uses, you should talk to her, without having the respect to talk to Trinity first. Even if she's not the decision maker, how you leverage is you focus and you double in on her and getting that meeting. So I would not go around to a decision maker, TLDR, if I hadn't talked to Trinity, at minimum for her blessing first. So I think we need to speed up here because we don't have too much time left. So I'm going to skip down to all of the emails are in here from the perspective of what to include in them. So you'll get that in the deck afterwards. So unfortunately, we don't have the time to cover them, but essentially all the playbook is in here. So I want to get down to the last playbook. So again, playbook number 1 was you're selling into Twilio. She's at PagerDuty. Trinity comes in and she is a decision maker. Playbook 2 is you're selling into Twilio. Trinity is over at PagerDuty and she turns in she wasn't the decision maker, and how to leverage her to get in front of the decision maker with the story of what happened. And then playbook 3 is I'm selling into Twilio and my champion just left. What do I do now? This happened to me 2 weeks ago, literally 2 weeks ago. And so, I'm going to document here of a playbook that came as a result of a mindset, or a hunch that I had. But playbook number 3, at TLDR, you always have to be multi-threaded. If you aren't, then basically I would see not being multi-threaded. And by being multi-threaded, I don't mean that you have sent an email to someone else in the process. I mean that you're friends with them. You've added value. You've gotten on their side. So even at current deals that you have that you've closed, or current deals that are in cycle, both, you always need to be multi-threaded. I would not view it as a decision maker as a decision maker. I view it as a decision maker is the final person for sign off, but they're supported, or detracted by everyone around them. A good decision maker listens to their team and they make decisions based on them often. They don't make it in a silo. So I would always be thinking about, when someone's on that call and it's like, well, it's just a frontline leader. It's like, no, they're equal weight. I want to win them all. So it makes it easy on them. So most of the deals that I've been in where I've won, it's because I actually had a stronger relationship with the champions and influencers that I did with the decision maker, and they fought for me internally. And all of a sudden, finally, the decision maker's like, fine, can we justify this? What's the math? And then they sign. So I would always be thinking about multi-thread, view every person with respect, always send articles, value, contextualize things for them according to their different buyer personas in the room, understand, do discovery on each one of them. If you're doing RFP style and you get on the line and there's, 15 people on the line, you can't do that on the line, but ahead of time, you should have reached out to people. You should be understanding whoever's in that final room, how do I pitch the best solution based on what each one of these people are trying to solve for, within this current time. And that's going to do the most favors. So
I think that should be the take home message here, because this was already important and you probably should have done it already, but now with the Great Resignation, even more than before.
Totally. So I'd say step one, it's just be multi-threaded, have a relationship with each one of the levels of authority and don't view them as one's higher than the other. Yes, a decision maker has more authority, but they're going to spend a less amount of time with you. These frontline managers are going to spend more time with you, but they don't have the level of authority. And your groundswell play is these reps, these frontline reps, if they buy in, if you have all the reps bought in and you have frontline managers bought in, the decision maker would have to go against all of those people to say no. Right. So there's your strength is in numbers. So I would have to try to have some level of chat, email, text going with each person in a deal. Most of these deals, when I do get to close them, I have a relationship with 5-6 people, internally, so that not only, am I making sure that my pitch is relevant, but if one of them churns, this is the nice use case. So my goal in all of it was I want to make sure that this pitch is relevant to everyone in the room, and what's the cross section there. But as a byproduct, I've had a number of deals, recently where the decision maker, champion, or influencer churn mid deal. And the great news was well, I have these other 3 people, that I can start to work with. So the main low hanging fruit, and then we can, Christian, you can go into how to sequence this, but the main low hanging fruit that I want to tease out here is if the person that churns in the deal was the DM, then you need to keep the deal moving. I would not wait. The excuse that's going to come up from the rest of the team is, well, let's wait to hire the next person who's our VP of sales so that they have buy-in and that they, this was their decision. What that's going to do to your deal is this. First of all, you do not know how long it's going to take to hire someone. Second of all, once they come in, it's a whole different bag. It's a whole different sales cycle. It's a whole different thing of pain points. And they're going to probably deprioritize buying any, you're not their number one at that point. So I would encourage through a process, let the main takeaway be this, encourage through a process of how they can buy in the meantime and how you can position it to them, so that they want to buy it in the meantime. Is you should have earlier found out what the problem is that they have and how that's impacting them. So I'd say Trinity. So I'm fine to wait until you hire this next person, but here's the thing. I'm a little confused because you shared with me, thank you for sharing it. You shared with me in the discovery process that 10% of your reps are hitting quota. You don't know what are the talk tracks at work. You really want to get a process in here. And that the impact of that is that you are 90% of your quota is not attained and your leadership is putting heat on you about it. If this new leader respectfully walks in, that needs to be a better situation for them, right? Like, do you want to continue to be at 10% of quota for the next 6 months until we hire the next person and then have to run a 3-month sales cycle? So you should know what's in it for them. So the question isn't, should we do it now or should we wait until this other person's involved so that they have buy-in? The question is, are you willing to let this problem continue to persist, that you originally reached out to me about, where all your reps aren't hitting quota? Do you want for that reality to be the same reality for the next 6 months? So I would say that's the main takeaway. Always be multi-threaded. And if it is a decision maker that churns, I hope that you did good discovery and that you know the impact of them continuing to go on without a solution like yours. So you can kind of not hold them to it, but encourage them with it of like, I'm fine to do that, but are we good with going another 6 months without, 10% of the team hitting quota? What's the impact of that? And can we get it done kind of in the meantime, or do we want to wait another year? So Christian, why don't you get into the how to automate, and then we'll close out for the day.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, Becc. That was fantastic. And as usual, it's not only about this like champion tracking, but these are like lessons for how to prospect better, how to be a better AE. So really awesome here. There very little that like what I want to share really is like, we want to have this webinar where we're not the vendor that pushes the product on you, but rather basically we want to show you how we do it. And this can also be done without user champs. What we're going to share is really something that give this to your sales ops person and they can like, implement this play for you. There's basically 2 things here. And what we say is if a champion joins a target account without an open up, then we say automate as much as possible. Put them into a sequence, maybe have the first step manual so that there's still some oversight here. But make sure that you reach out to this person. But if they join a target account with an open up, which is what we talked about today, then it's less about automation. Like you want to have the sequence, but you want to be much more mindful about the messaging, both to this individual and to the people you're already in touch with. So it's all about notifications. And once again, the notification is actually for 2 people. It's if these are 2 different people, it's for the person that was like the owner of that contact before, like basically if you're the customer success manager or the AE, you want to get notified that they left. And then if you're the AE on the new opportunity, you want to get notified as well. And Becc, if you want to, so this is really like, this is the slide that it starts with user champs, but it really starts with a champion changing. And then we see 3 scenarios typically that we focus on most. And in this case, it means someone changed, maybe a champion, and they join a customer account. Then that could actually really be interesting for AEs as well, in the sense that there's now an expansion opportunity. Like we notify customer success, we can also notify the account manager and telling them, hey, there's an expansion opportunity. Someone joined that already used the product. Then the second scenario is really what we talked about today. Once again, it's about they join an account with open opportunity. We notify the AE, and that's really all for this acceleration for getting inside details that I might not have before, and making sure that I close the deal, I close it faster, and maybe I close it bigger than I planned to do before. And last scenario, this is a little bit what we talked about last time. Oh, no, just which means they join an account, an ICP account without open up, and then we suggest automating as much as possible. Like this could be, you could be looking at hundreds or thousands of changes every month. So really you want automation, otherwise you actually miss a whole lot of these changes and you're not acting on it. So we recommend automatically put them into a sequence and maybe have the first step manual, so you can still look over it before it gets sent.
So Christian, so this process here is, so someone churned at PagerDuty, and so my CSM needs to be notified that that person churned, because we need to think about the resell and the renewal, right?
It's both, yes. So the old customer success manager needs to get notified, but if they go from PagerDuty to, let's say, Microsoft, and Microsoft is my customer, then I want to notify the customer success manager of Microsoft as well. So basically 2 CS get notified.
Great. So you have 2 for CS, and then the second one here for AEs is if I was selling into Twilio, then I want to get the notification, that someone, an advocate, hopefully, just joined the
Yeah.
fund. And then these latter 2 are for prospecting, correct? Of like, we have, we don't have the meeting going.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, cool.
Perfect. We're right on time here.
We're right on time.
Everyone's probably like, this was the most insane webinar. So that is everything. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. We are unfortunately up on time. So stay tuned. We're going to do a 3rd session. So the first one was prospecting. The second one is account executive, and you'll just have to show up for session number 3 for the 3rd playbook or type of playbook that you can do with executive term. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Becc. Thanks, Christian.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.